What's up, everyone? Welcome. We are live right now in the CannaBuzz community. And if you're watching us on YouTube, thank you so much for watching us on YouTube. Please like and subscribe. We've got a great interview for you today with Jeremy from BuildASoil, who also has a great YouTube channel. Make sure to check his out as well. We're going to be talking all about BuildASoil. We're in the summer. We're in the thick of summer right now. So we're going to be kind of catching up on what's going on out in the BuildASoil world, what's going on in his business, and also just kind of the grower scene right now, since we are almost into July, and so people are growing outside. And then we're also going to be talking a little bit about BuildASoil 3.0. That's one of the products that Jeremy's team makes. It's also just an interesting story for us because he's been sharing a lot of videos of the crazy, gigantic soil machines that he's got to build and figure, that whole process. So we wanted to get into that and just kind of hear some stories. But before we get into it, I have a few shout outs that I need to make. First, shout out to our CannaBuzz community. We've got folks in our live stream chat right now, folks like Crazy Pot Mom and White Socks and others that are asking us questions in the live streams. We've also got a full community where you can post pictures and videos and all that good stuff. So make sure to check it out and give us some support. Search CannaBuzz in the App Store and use the code GROWERSLOVE for 50% off your first month. Also, shout out to Grove Bags. Here's a Grove bag right here. It's a 1/4 pound Grove bag. It's a bag that you can use to cure your weeds. So instead of putting weed in a jar and worrying about burping the jars and all that kind of stuff, you just dry it in your tent and then you put it in a bag and you're good to go. So use the code CannaBuzz for 7% off your next order. And thanks to those guys for their support. And then lastly, of course, you need some great genetics to grow in your tent or outdoors or whatever. And for that, we recommend TikiMadMan over at TikiSeeds.com. He's got a summer sale going on, and he also has a strain called Moon Runts 2.0, which is the white runts times candy rain. And that has a free pack with purchase of a t-shirt or hoodie. And he also has 20% off. So it seems like a pretty dang good deal. Right, JR?
Yeah. He's doing that 20% off his whole site for the whole summer. All the apparel, all of the genetics. He even has clone shippers and all kinds of good stuff on there. So yeah, TikiSeeds.com is where you could find out. And also if you check out NeptuneSeedBank.com, he's got a lot of the latest drops and availability for Tiki's gear.
Awesome. Well, we are super excited today. It's a Monday afternoon for us when we're recording. Super thankful that our buddy here, Jeremy Silva from BuildASoil, joined us. He's been, like I said, he's been busy back at HQ working on all sorts of things. They just kicked off a sale today, so lots going on. We're going to get into it, but thank you for joining us, Jeremy. Oops, you're on mute, buddy.
Yeah, sorry. I thought I had the Control A worked out. My dogs were barking in the background. I'm trying to
yeah.
Hey, quiet. Sure, a lot of us have dogs. I just got
all of us do.
Family is actually my wife and my 2 stepdaughters are at the farm right now, and they're harvesting because it's that time of year, and so we're just getting it all done, man. It's a crazy day. Really stoked to be here. So thanks for inviting me back for round 2. This is awesome.
Round 2, ding ding. I'm excited because the first conversation is letting people know a little bit about, who you are, who BuildASoil is. And now we've kind of laid that foundation down when we can start getting into some of the nitty gritty of what BuildASoil has to offer and what that BuildASoil way means.
Okay, well, let's jump in, man. I'm looking forward to this. I've been looking forward to this.
Yeah.
And I think conversation number 2 is a little more fun. So let's do it, bro.
So I thought I'd kick us off actually with a question that I wanted to throw in last minute, just to talk about the growing season right now, because we are, like I mentioned just a little bit ago, we're almost into July. I've had plants outside for a minute here, or for a little while here in the West Coast. I'm in California. And I was just kind of curious what you've been hearing from people about the grower season. I know from my part here in California, it's been very cold and even rainy up in Humboldt and everything like that. So it's just been kind of weird. I was curious what you've been seeing or hearing from your customer community?
Yeah, I feel like same thing across the board. It's weird. I never really thought that I would have a career. I didn't plan on starting to build a soil where I'd be so good with like what bug was prevalent or what the weather was doing, right? And for the most part, I just wear flip flops every day and I don't really check the weather. But when you're growing, it's kind of like, yo, what's going on? Are we gonna have a freeze? When should I put the plants out? When am I at the right number of hours? And all these come from mistakes, right? A lot of times I'm like, yeah, put it out. Everybody says put your plants out now. It's a great week. And you're like, oh, and it froze this weekend. Perfect. Or
Right.
Here in Western Colorado, it's been a very interesting year. June is normally we start hitting 100-degree weather days, at least one or two. It seems like it's generally in the 80s. Up until this week, it's been rainy and gloomy and beautiful in a different type of way. It's a lot greener everywhere around here, even on some of the longer drives where it's normally pretty desolate. More wildflowers than I've ever seen. And so I'm not sure what that's going to mean. A lot of times when we're like talking ski season or things like that, shifts in weather can dramatically affect. It's like, is it going to be a big season? What's going to happen later? And so I don't know. I hope harvest time, I'm hoping that we have a mellow, like it can be monsoony for a while. And then by the time October comes, if it starts to get really cold early, it can be wild outdoors. But everywhere across the board from customers we talked to this year, it's been a wetter or just a more wild year. And so I don't have any particular.
Yeah, I've talked to a few people who are from Florida transplants there in Colorado, and they said that it seemed like Denver had almost like a beginning of a monsoon season there for a minute, where they had a lot of rain and volatile storms kind of pushing through, kind of one after another.
Yeah, and so this June has been like, if I waited around here, what I tell people when they come in, they're like, hey, I'm thinking about growing. I want to grow outdoors in my backyard. A lot of times I tell them, listen, I'd like you to wait till like the first or second week of June to plant outside. You can totally do it earlier, but I've learned a few things about our area. And then the other thing is I encourage them to match the container size. A lot of times people they'll carry out like a 4-foot plant outside.
Right.
And it'll be early season and they'll be like, yeah, I'm going into 30. You're like, ooh, I mean, it'll work. You could feed it and everything, but the expectation, in my opinion, is that if you plant early with a big plant, you're going to have a 15-footer. So like if all things are unlimited. So a lot of times personally, I'll plant late just to avoid all this crazy weather and so that I can have a manageable size without having to restrict them at all. They just get a free run. They go as hard as they want, but I start them a little later. And I swear it makes a really big difference. It lowers the stress. Like I don't have to worry about rushing. They make it through what a lot of times people around here, they plant in May and the wind is just beating the crap out of them and it gets really cold nights. And while some plants get really hardy and strong through that, I've noticed I can have a late transplant not go through that and then kind of pick up the pace and run past the other ones. So take it for what it's worth. But I feel like people that are watching this right now, I've had some really good runs just planting in July. And I'm talking taking like a 1-foot plant or a mom plant or whatever I have and saying, all right, it's not too late. The hours in the day are just starting to hit peak. So I'll throw it out right now and I'm still going to get a full run out of it. So if you thought you've missed the boat, right now is a really good time to start outdoors and still get a great healthy grow.
So I had a quick question for you, and then we'll get into JR's prepared questions. But my quick question on this topic was about this weird weather where I put my plants outside about a month ago. So at the very end of May, basically. I'm in California, so I wasn't worried about, or in especially a part of California where it doesn't get cold. So I wasn't worried about the cold or anything like that. But what I have had happen is it seems like those overcast mornings, like I know you're a California guy, right? You know, those overcast, like kind of foggy mornings. We've had that, and I live in a place where that doesn't happen. And I've had that for most of June, and now my plants are like 3 weeks into flower. And I was just curious if you've heard of that happening to people, even though we literally just had the equinox like 2 days ago or whatever that was.
Yeah, and people, you take it for granted. You start to think, oh, it's summer, so I'm good. But you look it up right now, we're barely to 15 hours a day, if that, right now where I'm at. And so I'd imagine you're similar. So you imagine throwing some shade onto that and a more sensitive plant, and all of a sudden you're pretty close to 12 hours or less. So the plants are going to trigger just because your location may not have like the full sun the entire time. Each particular location will have kind of some different issues there. Hey, Sam, are you still there? I think you froze up on
Yeah,
me.
I'm here.
Okay, cool. No, just the screen.
Yeah.
So that's something I've noticed, and it'll be one of the key lessons that we share with newer growers is that they really have to be aware of this. And there's a genetic around here that was made by Rootwise, and it's the Canyon Queen. And a lot of times he was running multiple generations of the Long Valley Royal Kush. And that one's finicky. You put it out a little early and it's going to flip the flower on you. So genetic dependent or just to be safe, a lot of the more successful outdoor growers that have been doing this for years, they'll buy some little CFLs or some UFO LEDs or something very affordable. They'll daisy chain them together in their little spot, or they'll put a big spotlight. They're going to find some way to hit some level of light that they can control for like 18 hours a day.
Yeah.
And when you're at 18 minutes a day, you're not going to get triggered. And then what you can do is actually just drop it. Sorry, you hear my dog barking in the background.
No, it's like cool. Yeah, no, I appreciate that answer. Yeah, because that's what I've heard from a lot of people, and I've seen it, I should say too, is you just see like those light bulbs that you get from Home Depot or whatever, you string them up and you just run them and you keep those lights on until, however late you want.
It seems pointless until you have this happen. And then you're like the re-veg and it goes back and forth and it can really, really mess with your grow, because if you're super lucky, the re-veg happens early because you plant it too early and then they come out of it and they're fine. But when it happens because of shade or because of weather or other issues, it can really derail things. And then it's going to be hard for them to flower properly because now we're coming into full sun.
Yeah.
So it's only going to get worse from here. And so obviously do your best to try and baby them to turn around, so to speak. But this can happen on the flip side too. I've had a lot of people that say, hey, I didn't realize my neighbor had a spotlight.
Right.
And all of a sudden my flowering plants weren't finishing like I thought they would be. And it turns out there's a light that's really bright that's on the backside of my plants all night. And so you can at least think of that right now. If you're an outdoor grower and you're new, like, is there something brighter than the moon that's going to be out there causing problems for you? And I will say, like 9 times out of 10, the plants are pretty resilient. But if it's something really consistent and it's next door or in your own yard, it can be a derailer for sure. And you're like, dang, I didn't even see that coming. Like, I put all this money and effort into it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
My only thought for Sam would be to maybe start a light depth and just before it gets flipped into too much veg, just keep those flower hormones going. I'm sure it won't be a problem building little 6-8 foot boxes or whatever.
I've got to quickly build a 20-foot like greenhouse around a section of my backyard. Yeah, I don't know if that'll work, but yeah. No, it's
like, man, I showed this all. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's live and learn, you know what I mean? Like you were saying, Jeremy, like I thought it's so funny to me, because funny in a kind of fucked up way, is because I thought I was so prepared this year that I had all my shit together. I had all my clones and everything set up, and then this happens, you know what I mean? So I'm just gonna take clones from everything and put it in inside, I guess, and have to mitigate my situation because I still need to come up with more flower. I'm gonna have to come up with that, or I'd like to, at least I'd like to figure out how I'm gonna come up with more flower now that my outdoor is gonna be all weird.
Yeah, we want abundance for sure.
Yeah, I can take your cuts. You could put some cuts out right now and at least walk away at the end of the season with something, buddy. I can take care of you that way. So my question for you, Jeremy, is so the closer you get to the equator, the more 12-12 the day is. But the further you get north, your time to go out becomes later, correct?
Yes, and this is where you see a lot of the tropical plants, more equatorial jungle-like plants that we come to think of as like utopia. A lot of times they're not going to be good with 20 hours a day of light because they just aren't grown like that. And so I'm growing coffee for the first time and I'm looking it up. It's like 9 hours of light or something. I'm like, what? How? So it makes sense to me because they'd be underneath the shade of trees and there wouldn't be as much light, even though there's 12 hours. And so I remember reading like on IC Mag back in the day, there was this grower that was like a guerrilla grower in Hawaii, and he'd go plant in the sugarcane fields and he'd tell you the stories of like trying to go harvest and all like getting caught. And it was pretty rad. And he would talk about how in some of his spots, he would get a full 2 or 3 harvests from the day shifting and then re-vegging and then growing and then re-vegging and then growing. And he would just come harvest and let it be and harvest and let it be. And just a different world compared to what I was thinking about at that time. But it makes sense. And I also feel like that's why you're going to have some genetics that are probably a little more equatorial. And if they get even close to that 12 hours, they're going to trigger because, you know, they're vegging at 14 hours or something, 15 hours, and they're like trying to keep going. And as soon as the time starts to creep, they go. So certain genetics, for whatever reason, they're just going to be a lot more prone to that effect, where other genetics will get those shady days and just kind of ride it out. Like, no way, bro, I'm not flowering. It's not even close. And I do think that that just packed within them as their ability to survive. So I will say that when growers are growing the same region year after year after year, genetics become significantly more important for being able to survive your particular weather, your particular pests, and also your particular, light. Now, of course, I prefer to choose what I want, not what's just perfect for this area, which doesn't really exist since most of the breeding done was for indoor. There are some breeders that breed for outdoor, right? Especially in the California area. But at the same time, a little trick like extending the light, hanging something over the plant, just being slightly more prepared for those curveballs that maybe only happen once every 3 or 4 years. But when you have that decade or more of growing experience, you start to prepare for those statistical outliers. And it sucks because I feel like you said, you're more prepared and now you're punished with a new problem.
Yeah, exactly.
The garden's going to keep throwing new problems, so.
Yeah, no, and I think that's one of the things that every year when stuff, it's a new thing every year basically. And my wife is like, man, I just feel bad for you because I know how much work you put into it and blah, blah, blah. And, and I guess that's one of the good things about growing is it's like, it teaches you some really hard lessons. You know what I mean?
It really
that like
does.
Sometimes life just doesn't go your way, man. And you can put a lot of work into it and then another challenge gets thrown your way and you just have to roll with it and come up with a new solution. You know what I mean?
Yep. And you'll always come up with a solution. And what's great about cannabis is, it's always been that way. When I was young and didn't grow, it was like somebody else at the party was usually going to share. And then next time it was me. We were always about that because it wasn't just money. It was like, bro, my guy didn't come through. Like, you know what I'm saying?
Right.
So you're just always taking care of each other, having a plan B. And I feel like the same way life, the garden teaches you the same thing here. I will say it could be a lot worse. It's really disheartening to have an entire grow. And there's so many people that are going to lose their entire crop after they've harvested due to bud rot and worms and like other lessons. So you'll turn this one around, and hopefully just sharing this conversation today will be helpful for a few viewers that maybe like, yo, I didn't really think about that. Maybe I better, get dialed in. And sometimes you just get lucky. And I feel like when you're lucky, it's like that beginner's luck, they call it, so that you have enough stick-to-itiveness to make it through it when shit gets a little bit weird.
Totally.
And that's what it's meant to be, I think. So
yeah, it's rare that you get in a situation where your environment and your setup is the same always. It's like in life you usually find yourself dealing with those parameters that make us successful at what we're doing. And shout out to the outdoor guys, because nature always takes its cut, and sometimes that can be a hard lesson. And I think now I wanted to kind of transition towards the subject that we had laid down, and that's about gardening as a vegetable gardener or a flower gardener and a cannabis gardener, how those two worlds sometimes intertwine. And my question, like my daughter-in-law, I turned her on to Miles's fermented plant extract for her community garden, and she'll never start a season without it. She said her explosive growth was far above anyone in her community garden. And so how many people in that vegetable world in traditional gardening like that do you see hitting you up for advice and products and stuff like that?
It seems like more and more. I will say that we kind of have this gateway effect where a lot of our customers, they come to gardening because they found cannabis to be important. It's expensive. They'd like to replace it. And then they find out not only are they replacing this cost, but they're gaining an entirely new experience in life. And they start to ask more questions about what grows. And I remember for myself, I was like, well, do I flush my tomatoes or what do I do with the part A, part B? You know what I mean? Like,
yeah, right.
So it comes full circle and it's very normal. And for Build a Soil, it was the same way. So to answer your question, we have a lot of people that are transitioning and doing a little bit of both. I think Corona also probably pushed a lot more people into a new hobby of like, hey, maybe I should grow some food. Maybe I should learn about this. But Build a Soil Family Farms, our vegetable farm that's next to Build a Soil, I mean, part of me was a little worried. It's like we've done all this no-till stuff, we've tried all these different practices, but I see these like hydroponic tomato houses and they have like 1,000 tomatoes on a plant going to the ceiling. And part of me is like, how does this really work for like growing food in a large scale? How would it work for like feeding the family? And I'm really happy to report that the family farm's greenhouse this year, it's run by just my wife. She's been doing basically all the work on her own. And she's able to do it because the systems that are in place and the fact the soil is doing all the work. I mean, it's feeding the plant. She's doing all the hard work. But once she gets everything germinated properly, once it's all put in the row, and once the drip's put in place, and once the craftland's been put down and the worm castings and it just crushes. And she's basically just keeping up with pruning and harvesting, and it stacks. I mean, we're talking as long as my arm, just cherry tomatoes, just like the Rasta colors, just all the way down arms like you'd see in the hydro tomato houses. And it's literally like there's worms and some organic amendments. And it's not even like build a, it's any organic amendment put down similarly. We don't have anything special. We just find good stuff, mix it together and whatever else. But it works. It works so well. It fills up the entire greenhouse. And I knew that it would, right? Because obviously the cannabis growers, it's very important that you get the good yield, the good quality, and you're willing to spend the money on it. So I knew it would trickle down. But to see it in action and see the number of cucumbers and peppers and tomatoes and how good the lettuce looks, and it's like it just really drives it in you and instills with you that, okay, these methods for sure work for all the annual flowering plants. They work great for all the vegetables. And then it just becomes like, okay, well, what would still fit the budget, right? I mean, they not want to go spend $1,000 on some coconut water to douse an acre with and not see as much result as the home grower that's really trying to express the terpenes in their cannabis plant that has to last them a year, right? So there's still different levels there, but for the most part, every one of our customers that's local, like, yeah, if they're gonna have an outdoor grow, you bet they're gonna have some food of some sort. And I feel like ubiquitously across the board, every single one of our customers that has house plants and decides, this no-till is pretty cool. I wonder what that house plant would do if I up-potted it, or, hey, I'm going to try and grow some lettuce in this. And all of a sudden they're like, wow, that was the most productive. Like, why didn't I do that sooner? That was so great. And so what we teach, what we discuss with the Build a Soil way, it's just a culmination of organic gardening practices, and they have nothing to do with cannabis. They have everything to do with a hungry annual flowering plant, which cannabis is. And so all of our vegetables that we eat, for the most part, fit in that same niche. And then things like lettuce and your herbs and everything else, it just takes a lot less. Like it doesn't take more. So
right. So what are I kind of have two questions. One is I'd love to get your tips around like some of those vegetables or fruits that I should think about planting if I have a cannabis garden, because because obviously I can go nuts and like buy whatever seeds or go to, the store and just pick whatever seeds off the wall. But when I've been in that realm or thought process, I've always wondered, like, are there certain things that I should be picking or like that would be better if I picked, if it would be like more helpful, I guess, almost like companion planting. And then I also was just curious about what are some of those common, fundamentals that kind of carry over between the two, like amending and things like that, I imagine.
Perfect. Yeah. So we have a blog post on how to make your own complete organic fertilizer. It works the same for food as it does for cannabis. And full seasons where you really see it. So in a full season cannabis crop, you're going to see if there's micronutrient issues because you're going to get disease or you're going to have problems. Where when things are healthy, you should be able to see a full fruition. And same with your food. You'd like it to have all that mineral density. So looking at a complete organic fertilizer in a living soil situation, we're typically looking at like a seed meal, something that has all of the nitrogen, potassium, phosphorus, like a well-rounded. So that could be soybean meal. It's heavily GMO, so we go elsewhere, but some sort of seed. And on top of that, we had a phosphorus source. We like to use fishbone meal, a bran. And then from there, there's calcium and micronutrients. And it's like you mix all that together and you basically have the full buffet. And that translates really well to living soil in vegetables or cannabis because we're not talking about water soluble, readily available nutrients or some formula. We're talking about a buffet of organics that, as the plant grows, will be able to digest according to its needs. And you're basically being the steward there. And the good news is that, while cannabis can deal with a little bit more, your vegetable plants are going to benefit from the same situation as far as like, hey, you don't want a ton of salt. Like, yeah, some grass will grow, but like your tomatoes won't like it. Also, you hear about high bricks gardening. Well, high bricks is basically high calcium, low sodium, potassium, and it allows your plant to grow more sugars faster, to be able to produce that bricks level that we come to know as a sweet fruit or a healthy plant. And while I don't think high bricks means that you're going to have a perfect grow and no pests, I do feel like, similarly to a human, if you're eating right and you're active, you're probably not going to have 90% of the issues that plague people that aren't eating right and aren't active. And so in the plant world, it just crosses over when you're considering all the nutrition, you're not missing some key factor. It works. And the Coots recipe, as basic as it is, it's a three-part soil.
Yeah, I kind of listed, as we get down, I kind of listed each of those ingredients, and I would like for you to kind of give us a little breakdown of each of those and tell us what their function is, so that people can kind of wrap their head about what's available right away, what might not be available, that kind of thing.
Yep. No, that's good. And a lot of it's like, it allows you to interchange things when you kind of know what they're for. So
yeah, and so now when like Sam was asking about the kind of that between each garden, the cannabis garden and the vegetable garden commonalities, when you have the microbial interactions with those individuals, they're going to be dictating what their nutritional needs are. And then it's what's there that's going to be made available to them in a more tailored fashion, rather than if you're just pouring a bottle of automatically available, ready to go, that kind of thing. Right?
Yeah. I mean, I feel like you could let a child pick out their own food and they're going to live. But if you make your own IV injection, you better know exactly like what you're putting in there.
Right.
So, right. It becomes a little bit more important. And companion planting too. It helps. The cover crop helps make nutrients available. It helps move moisture. To answer your question from a minute ago about companion planting, I think a lot. I try not to overthink it, and I really do like to keep the cannabis kind of separate. But you can grow it all together. It's just there's challenges in the sense that, like, around here, the pepper plants, they attract more aphids.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. Aphids.
And so that's fine if your peppers are like over there, then maybe they're going to like that more so than fucking with your cannabis. Yeah. So you can learn these tricks, but I feel like it goes deeper. And when you get into that, there's no one size fits all answer. And so we could discuss a few more things about that, but we could talk all day. Like indoors, a lot of times people companion plant really fast growing stuff like radishes, things that are just easy to get a harvest without worry. But outdoors, I mean, really the sky is the limit. You just have to think a little bit more in context about, hey, is this going to like blow pollen that's going to be all over my plants? Or is this going to attract a pest that may be more of an issue? And so I think in the beginning, it's probably better to be a little more simple or keep your vegetable garden, your cannabis slightly separate. But honestly, I've always had them pretty close together and it's never really been a problem.
So then my lightning round question, and then we can move on, is what's one or two companion plants that you would suggest that actually you think no BS actually makes a difference? Because you could look up a list. I could look a list and it says borage and all these different things. And I've not found, for example, that borage actually does anything. I mean, it's pretty, but it's not whatever. But so I was curious what your perspective is of like, if there's one or two plants that you feel actually make a difference as a companion plant or as helpful to your garden.
Good question. I don't have a really good answer. Really, I use our 12 seed cover crop as my main companion planting mix, but it doesn't provide alternative. It doesn't provide extra benefit like food that I can eat. Yeah. And while I enjoy that, I do realize that most of the times when I'm in like a container indoors and I'm companion planting other things like lettuce or herbs, it ends up becoming so secondary that I don't really get like as much crop out of it as I'd like. And so I tend to focus on the cannabis as the main result, and the companion plants that I use are secondary. And I really do like, at minimum, a little bit of like a white Dutch clover, something super easy to maintain. Or at best, I like our 12 seed, but you just have to pay attention more, especially outdoors, because the vetch can vine it, and totally. I like to just down and pull it down. But what I do notice is there's arguments like really in a 60-day grow, 90-day grow, are you really going to fix nitrogen? Like, well, I mean, maybe not, but I got plenty of that in there anyways. I can add it, amino acids. Like, that's not really my limiting factor. What my limiting factor is when I have unlimited budget for fertility. Yes, you could go improve a dead acre by using a lot of these plants. But when you have everything already, it's kind of like, what are you really adding by adding a companion plant? And to me, you're adding those roots intertwining and getting some sort of sophistication there in the soil where there's more of a polyculture going on. And I do think that I see healthier plants. And I believe part of it is just because they're going to drink water at different rates. They're going to be feeding the biology, and they're going to be interacting together in this ecosystem that starts to be more developed. And when I have something that like a first round no-till is the epitome of like what used to be a 5-gallon, no mulch, straight living soil plant. And it was almost like instead of hydro, we grew organic soil, but there was no other component. And what we saw across the board when living soil growers started to add mulch and cover crop and worms and larger containers, the health of all the plants just went like to the 10. And it was like, wow, this really produces really healthy plants. And it lets the genetics kind of shine. And so I would say that that's really having a cover crop, although it doesn't have to be anything in particular, having it cover the soil, move the moisture, be a part of the process, but still be secondary is paramount. Now, when I get a crop that I like, sometimes I let it get bigger because I want to get the peas or I want to get some strawberries or whatever. Strawberries are great too, right? But they come with their own little challenges like, how do I get them to produce the first year? Do I get runners? Where do I source them from? And then if you just break down and go to Home Depot and buy some plants and bring them into your grow, you might be bringing pests in without knowing it. And so there's always a little bit of a level when it comes to intertwining into the cannabis garden. But having a cover crop and keeping it subservient has been a game changer to big beds of living soil for me.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate that explanation and those random detours that I took you on, Jeremy, and JR. So let's get into Build a Soil 3.0. So Build a Soil 3.0, it's been in the works for a bit. One of the things that was topical that I did want to touch on with respect to it in particular was I know there's been so much work going on behind the scenes to just have literally have the machine that can put the soil together. So I was just kind of curious, I just was curious if you could share a little bit of insight with the community of like being the business owner that's trying to make all the madness happen so that people can get this really high quality soil, at home.
Yeah, I'd love to share more about it. So when we first started Build a Soil, we were just basically copying recipes that were given to us and trying them, and it worked really well. And we originally noticed that the compost quality made the biggest difference. So even though we wanted to use local compost, when we started sending it to the lab, because it looked good, right? There's mushrooms growing out of it. It looks good, smells good. And people were using it and saying that, that the local compost was pretty good. And we'd send it to the lab, or you'd get a report from some local compost producer, and it was like off the charts in alkalinity and sodium and other things that may work when you use 5% or something, but when we're like doing the Coots recipe, which is 1 part compost, 1 part peat, 1 part aeration, 33.33% is compost. So if it's out of whack, your whole soil was out of whack. And so we started learning that. But good news, we found some good compost, the Ole Mountain, the Malibu, that were consistent batch to batch. And we've scaled up with them over the years, so we've kept in good supply. And we make those classic recipes. But the 3.0 and the light came about because, well, light came, not sure if light was first. It was around the same time. But we realized that in the light recipe, we could limit the amount of compost and match the amount of amendments against the soil test. And what I found out was, man, a lot of times you get a soil test, you don't need that much stuff to get the balance. But all of us were like throwing tons of amendments in the soil.
Yeah.
And sometimes the plants would hate you for like a week, but then they'd be fine. And so I think it was more of a, hey, these plants in this type of soil, you can have a pretty big buffer, like a wide margin of error and still succeed, but not know if it could have been better. And so we noticed bigger yields when we started removing the excesses. It wasn't necessarily like, oh, you don't have enough phosphorus or enough nitrogen. It's pretty easy to add shit, even in the organic world, whether it's a tea or an organic feed of some sort. But what's difficult is removing excesses that are just too much. And so for us, when we started testing and we wanted to make the 3.0, we decided to find out what like the max level. And so what we would do is we would add, Normally we'd add 80 pounds of minerals and like 20 pounds of amendments per yard. We started going, what if we add like 100 pounds of amendments? What if we had 50 pounds of amendments? And we just mix up batches that would literally go 140 degrees with heat because they just get so much carbon and organic matter like cycling in that yard. And we'd send it to the lab and then we'd adjust. And we found out that sometimes it was not a problem to add a lot, but sometimes we added a lot of kelp and all of a sudden sodium and potassium shot up. Or we added too much of a seed meal and we didn't notice any actual change on the soil test because it took a while to break down and would build up later. And so the 3.0 is kind of like, hey, we found the limit where if we add more than this, it tends to make a soil that doesn't work quite as good out the gate. And it'd be better to just wait and add more later. And that's how the 3.0 evolved. And there's been some iterations where we used to have a pinto bean compost that was pretty awesome and it had really high phosphorus and calcium. And so it allowed us to venture into making 3.0 because the budget wasn't blown on all the ingredients because the local compost. In fact, we still have that pinto bean compost. It's just we outscaled it and it's still available and more than we could use now, but I don't want to reintroduce it because it's one local supplier, but it's still there. And so if people want to snipe it, it's on the sale right now, but high phosphorus, high calcium. And I was stoked on that. And eventually, when that went away, we had to replace it with more expensive amendments. But the good news with amendments, and I often think about this, but we were taking the Never Sink course from Connor Crickmore, and that's on how we do our vegetable farm. He has a really big course on like every single thing you could think of. But he started talking about how the compost was kind of all over the place too, even in their own compost, where when you buy amendments, NPK wise, because it's already dehydrated and ground up, basically what you're applying. And for him on the farm, that made it more duplicatable to say, take this bucket, scoop it, and you put that on that row all the way down before you plant. Where if you did compost, you'd have to send it to the lab, make sure it's what you expect it to be, and kind of change each year. So 3.0 was just that, using good compost to the max. And if we had done the 1/3, like 33% and all the amendments, it was a little too much. So we played with backing the compost down a little, blending worm castings and compost, adding amendments, more minerals. And that's ultimately where we've ended up to today with the 3.0 recipe. And it works really, really well. It's my wife's favorite. It's my favorite. Like if I've got a grow at home where I don't want to worry about top dressing right away, I'll just use the 3.0 and I have really, really good results. And to my surprise, people buy it. Like when I first made it, I thought, okay, this will be good for some of us that work here, but like there's a lot of shit we put in there. Then it goes up to 140 degrees. So we literally can't sell it for 2 to 3 weeks while it goes through its biological process. It gets all white mycelium on it. And then we run it back through our machinery. So we literally have to load it back into the machinery, run it through a second time so that we can take what's sat there for that entire cooking process and bag it up and re-moisten it or just break it up so it's not like sit in the clumps and then put it into the 1 cubic foot bags. Otherwise, if someone buys a yard, we just wait the amount of time and then it's available for sale. And looking back, I kind of wish that I've never done it because it is a logistical nightmare to make soil, import all the different ingredients and make sure they're always in stock. And then like the basalt, to make a nutrient kit that we make before we make the soil, we start with 250 pounds of basalt and we have to go weigh those out individually. Then we have to scoop all the ingredients on top of that so that we can run those in our nutrient mixer that blends all the amendments together. Then that gets loaded onto the hopper above our soil line so that it can evenly disperse that blend throughout the recipe. And I'm kind of like, man, it'd be a lot easier if we didn't make this so gangster at the gate. And then it didn't take 2 weeks to cook because I could literally just run it on the machine and bag it that day, like most soil companies. And so now if we run out of soil today, it's 3 weeks before we have more. So we've got to be very predictive. And so when you hear us get behind, it's like, well, we missed the throttle of the guess of 12 incoming truckloads by 4 days and the temperatures are not down yet because the weather changed. So we're bagging it when we're bagging it. And we backed ourselves into that corner, but it also works really well. So it is what it is. We're going to keep doing it,
Yeah.
Those were a lot of the questions that we really had because in my mind, I'm thinking of this cook time. And then I'm thinking of you're tracking the demand for the soil so that you're not overproducing or way underproducing. And then at that, you got to put it into a form that people can buy in a bag. And so I can imagine
I'd love it if everybody just made their own.
I wish
Honestly, because we'd go through all the ingredients. They'd have the best soil ever because they made it from scratch. Even when we
Right.
put it in a bag, it's not as good as you make at home, because like at home, when I make my soil, I'm drinking a beer, hanging out, like you can break up every little clod, turn the hose on, turn the hose off, get it exactly how you want. 2 hours later, go check the pile, be looking at it, where we're making it, but we're making it like we're making catering for a wedding. Yeah, it's good ingredients, but we've got to get it so that everybody's fed. And although it's the same ingredients, I feel like running through a machine, putting it in a bag, having it sit there, being sent to your house, it's better if you can just get this up and running in your own home, get planted and go. And the other prediction that I made when we released the BuildASoil Take It Bake Kit, and I thought if we made it really easy, maybe more people would start from scratch. They wouldn't be so scared. And it worked. We sold kits that broke our system because our picker packers couldn't fit all the kit on one little cart because it's so heavy.
Wow.
And what we learned from that is what I thought would be true, that these customers would be more connected to their soil because they made it with their own two hands. And two things would happen. One, they'd have a better quality result. And two, if they had any little issue, they wouldn't be so quick to just blame the chef, us. They would be blaming themselves, and they would be asking more diligent questions about, oh, did I overwater it when I mixed it, or what did I do? And for the most part, everyone that makes their own soil comes out the other side going, man, I wish I'd done that sooner. It was really rewarding. And the plants are the best they've ever been. And part of it's just because it's so alive right there at your house. By the time you need it, it's never been in a bag. Like, yes, our soil works great and it ramps right back up to life, and we do a good job with it. But it's kind of like I miss In-N-Out from California. I grew up. My uncle actually designed the logo from the old In-N-Out arrow to the new one. It's like a family thing. But bro, if I'm gonna ask you to go put that in a box and send it to me, like, yeah, the reminiscence might be there, but like it's not the same, right? So
right. And well, as soon as you described to me breaking apart the mycelium, that's the moment when you really want to use that, because
yeah, I'm not gonna say it's gonna like double your yield or something, but it just makes life like home baked bread right from the oven. Like it's just another level, right? And so I can't for that to someone unless they get to experience it. And that's why I'm adamant about, like, try our ingredients, learn our stuff, make your own. And I love that people still buy from us, but at the end of the day, it's what we're trying to share with BuildASoil is that experience. And everybody knows it when you finally, like, you're checking, you're like, that's how bud grows. You're like, oh, wow, it smells so good. And then you learn all these lessons, like, why doesn't it smell so good after I harvest? How do I dry properly? Every one of these little lessons. We've learned them from other people too. But the problem about learning from other people is it seems like they're always busy right when you need that answer. And so it's good to have all of this community where you can watch the videos and you can, like, you can figure it out even if your buddy's busy. So
yeah, that's kind of like what we're trying to do, is make stuff available that people can use, and onto that, say I'm a guy, I've got a flower room that's resetting every 9 weeks. What are my cook times that I need to have in preparation to make sure that I always have the soil I need to go into flower and start that process?
Yep. So this is a multiple pronged question. It's kind of loaded in the sense that what I aim to do is only do this once unless I need to add more. But in the no-till paradigm, we're trying to produce more soil than required so that your runs, when you harvest, are pulling less than 50% of what was in the soil out. If you deplete it in a smaller container from 100 down to 0, you need to, like, recook it, re-add nutrients to it, plant back into it. But when you have more soil and you're doing that no-till, you're never doing it again. If your room size doesn't change, you could literally go in there before you harvest, and you could be top dressing before you harvest and go harvest, or you could harvest and that same day go top dress and then have your other room ready with your transplants. And there's been a lot of play here. So I'll speak in what I would like to teach, and that's, you're not going to make soil each round. That's re-amending, where you would, like, dump it in a pile, you'd add stuff back into it, you put it back in the containers. And I think it's a lot of work. What I've learned from nature is that, like in the forest, all the fertility is up top. And that's where the feeder roots are. And so when you have this multiple cycle deep no-till bed or 15 to 30 gallon container, you can just add to the top. And as long as you have that mulch and you're watering and the worms are in there, it literally just turns it into soil. You never have to make new soil. You never have to have a cook time again. You literally harvest, plant back in, and you're ready to rock. And so it's that simple. But when the caveats there are, do I have a room that's always in flower and I'm kind of perpetual? In which case, like, how big do I want to veg plants to open my bed of soil to drop it in? Because if you're going to go drop 5 gallons in so you can flip to flower that day, you might miss a little hookup time in the flower room. And now you're digging lots of soil out, where most of us are putting smaller clones in, which means our flower room has to veg for at least 10 days. So that's my goal. My goal is to have stretchier genetics, which a lot of the better ones are for whatever reason. I'm not saying it has to be, but you know, a lot of the stuff I like, it really goes 2 to 3 times when you flip to flower. And where I see the stretch really double and triple is when it has unlimited root space. If you're root bound before you flip to flower, they don't get as big. But when you have a big bed and you've only vegged 7 to 10 days, you can flip and they fill up your entire space. And so that's been my trick to the no-till is, okay, I'm going to harvest. Now on YouTube, I kind of staggered a lot because there's so much going on. But if I was really trying to get the most herb out of my room, I'd have my clones ready to go. That would be my planning. They'd be rooted and ready. I'd be harvesting. And the day I'd harvest, I would be transplanting back in, flip it to veg, and I'd veg for 7 to 10 days, flip to flower again, and be off to the races one more time. And a shorter veg time, I've seen this a number of times, produce phenomenal healthy results, where it feels like the opposite happens with newer growers. They over veg, hack them completely back, and then they go flip to flower. And I'm like, man, you all like when you go golf, a lot of times you joke, you're like, hey, you're like 10 practice shots were your best ones.
Right, exactly. Yeah.
So
I agree with that too, especially with the timing of things. I think that's interesting. So what does the setup and veg look like as you're preparing to go into your flower beds and then your flower no-till?
So that's the beauty is if you have a perpetual veg going, it doesn't matter how long it takes to get where you want, as long as it's ready when you need to transplant. And that's the game of prediction. It's almost like being a chef predicting, like, so all the food's hot at the same time. There's a little bit of leeway. And so you'll see this in season 5 right now. The clones took a little bit long to root. And I knew that would happen. So I wanted to plant these seeds before I took the clones, so that if the clones took a while to root, but rooted and the seeds were popping around the same time, when I transplant them all, I don't have some that are way bigger than each other. And that's up to each in their own. But if I've got a veg room going, you can either decide, hey, I'm about to move into flower. I'm going to have 8 to 10 weeks of flower or more. I can pop seeds now, have them sexed and ready. So your veg room better be coinciding with your flower room. But if you have clones and you don't need to sex them, then you need to make sure that you have the size that you want. And in my opinion, that's a 3-week process. Maybe they root in 7 to 10 days, you transplant and you want to get them healthy. But if you give yourself 2 weeks and it doesn't go perfect, now you're waiting a week or 2 that you could have been already vegging in. But here's the flip side. If you're like, oh man, I don't want to be off at all, so you cut your clones early, you could be getting big plants starting to overgrow your space and you're still not ready to harvest. And I think that's worse, because when you're holding a plant back, it's like it wants to run and you're saying, sorry, we have 3 more weeks until you get to do your thing. That's where you get decline. And that's where you have to be better. You have to know how to feed. You have to like be there every day in case they run out of water, because you're not trying to transplant before you transplant. And so there's a window there. But when you learn how long it takes, like on average, it takes 10 to 15 days to root. And then from there, it takes another week or 10 days to get them vigorous. And so I always offset it a little bit. And I feel like worst case, what I like to do is play with the lighting. And so if I know that, hey, this flower room is going a little bit longer and my veg is super healthy, I got good root strike, everything happened a little sooner, then I'll dim the lights and I'll let them relax and I'll let them walk. But if I just keep popping and keep them running, I'm going to run into a wall if I can't transplant when I want to transplant. So it becomes about managing that energy. And what I've noticed personally is that when I was perpetual, so my flower room, I would like harvest 2 or 3, put 2 or 3 more in. That was my answer in the beginning, because I couldn't plan very well. So I thought, well, if I'm always harvesting, I always have weed. What I didn't realize was I'd always be trimming. I'd always be staggering a drying situation that was less than ideal. I wouldn't have a huge volume to keep humidity up. Where I live is dry. I'd have, less, and then I'd have to deal with that. And so when I switched from a perpetual flower room over to a perpetual veg, and stopping and cleaning and resetting in flower, everything was better because then I'd get a bigger yield that would last longer, one big dry, one big trim, and my next round would be bam, 2 to 3 months right after it. And so as long as I knew, hey, I need a pound personally per month, or I need 8 ounces per month, or I need 4 ounces per month, or whatever your number is, you could say, okay, I need this many plants, this much space, and I'll be locked in. I'll shoot the numbers a little bit high. That way I can pheno hunt and still end up with my numbers. And you're locked in. Like literally, it comes to the point where a lot of growers that I know, it's kind of like, hey, you want this old pound I have? It's like losing flavor, and I don't know what to do with it. You know, I don't want to throw it in the trash, but when your next round's about to finish, you know it's gonna be fresh and taste good. You start to look at your older jars, and you become spoiled. It's like, yeah, you could have the once per year harvest, and outdoors great. Don't get me wrong, but it becomes imperative that you dry and cure properly with a once a year harvest. Otherwise, 6 months into it, you're gonna be like, this weed sucks. And so I like to offset that once a year because sun grown is my favorite. It like hits different. It's really good when you grow your own sun grown. But I like to offset that with fresh flavors all year round. So
yeah, I kind of like the fresh terps. I like that first month. I feel like the effect of it declines over time. You know, or it doesn't necessarily decline. It changes over time. And that's why we're really into the Terploc bags, because I put my last harvest, which was about 3 months ago, into a bag, and I just opened that fresh bag today for the first time, and it looks way better than if I had kept it in a jar. Wasn't oxidized nearly as much, and so I think, like you said, these little tools that we're using to help people be successful and to have those fresh terps maybe year round is something that I think everybody can get into. And that the sun grown flower is something I think when people dry and cure it right, will realize that it's on a different level. I mean, its relationship to especially if it's in the earth, in my opinion, if it's in the earth, sun grown, it's a totally different thing. It's a totally different thing.
Yep. And we could talk about it for a while, but someone who's not experienced it sounds like a bunch of people talking about like, I taste cinnamon and cardamom in my wine,
Right.
like whatever, right? But when you smoke all the time and something hits you different, you feel that warm fuzz, like you just feel good. Vibes are good. You're like, dude, there's something about that sun grown. And I think that's when you have an affinity for this. When you do it, it's so easy to connect to other growers just because you know. And like the Terploc bags, I've not used enough of, but I know that a couple of different ways to go in the sense that with a jar doesn't mean perfect. And I prefer jars, but if it's a half full jar, you have a lot of air in there and it doesn't have a two-way. And so it can affect it over 6 months time if it wasn't stored properly, or the light can get through it if you didn't put it in a tub and put it away. Little things like I've noticed with the Terploc type bag, if you don't seal it all the way, you could blow it. So that's one way you could mess it up. Where with a jar, at least you know it's like screwed tight. So everything has pros and cons. But I feel like as we learn what our weaknesses are and how to overcome it, and you have experience to understand it, it's like, oh, now I know. Okay, I put it in that bag, you do it your way, and it's good in 6 months. That's all we can ask for is like, hey, if I put this away and it's 6 months when I need it, is it going to be mold? Is it going to be dry? Is it going to be good? And so for the longest time, I mean, I remember reading like, who was the DJ Short? He had his whole like drying and curing method that a lot of us copied because we're grasping for anything. And then we'd all go online and share our technique. And I remember like burping jars and go like, it smells like hay. I don't get what's going on here. Why? And when does it come back? After a few weeks? And then eventually, I think what worked for me out of the DJ Short method was that earlier, before it was brittle, you would take branches and put it in a paper bag and you'd roll it down. What I didn't realize at that time was it was just delaying the process of removing the moisture slower and slower and slower. And so once I realized, oh, it's just supposed to be a long, slow process, that's how you get quality. Aha, now it doesn't matter if it's in the paper bag or if it's in a room, as long as it's a slow dry. Yeah. And so I think with experience, you're able to pinpoint why something works, but who cares? If it works, it fucking works, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, I'm still the paper bag guy. Like, I'll trim at the level I think it's at, and then I paper bag it. And now I've learned that the moisture meter for construction, like the materials with the, I use the analog one. I hit that at right about 9%. And then I go into the grove bags, and then I don't have to burp or anything. They release the moisture. And for people who are learning and just starting, it kind of helps them, like you said, get that successful moment that makes them want to keep going through all the failures they're bound to experience in the whole process of learning to grow, you know.
Well, the good news is once you come out the other side, like let's say you go to a house party or something, or you're visiting some friends and you bring a jar like that loud, you know, when you open it, like the whole neighborhood knows what's up. It's a proud moment. It's kind of like, yeah, I grew that. And here's some to share. And I feel like a lot of us are after that. We're always, especially because it's like, it's not like we were in control. It's just, what did your dealer give you? What was the bag of weed you got? And I was super lucky to grow up in California where shit, when I first moved to Colorado, I'd never seen brick before. And I was like, hey, dude, and I got some brick and I was like, oh, this is what they're talking about. Holy shit. But when we were getting herb, a lot of times it was just like, it was all decent. A lot of our guys were picky. And so you'd go grab an ounce and split it up with your homies. And sometimes it was better than others. So if you know, your buddy at a party or your buddy that came over had something a little better, you're kind of like, yo, what's up with that? And so that translates, I think, into when you grow, it's just so fun to share that heat, especially if someone has like not been privy to it, you know, it just blows their mind. And I know there's always levels to everything in life, but I know when I first started growing, that was the goal, was like, can I just grow something as good as I would get like at the dispensary in California when you went to that one spot that like the backpack kid from NorCal would come down with some train wreck or come down with some fire OG or whatever was popular at that time, pop it off, put it in the dispensary. You'd be there, be like, oh my God, I was here at the right place, right time. And you'd get that herb.
Yeah.
It was better than
good old days.
And you're like, if I could grow and I could produce that, life would be good. And for me, that's what it was. It was like 9 times out of 10, I was like, had a bad day at work. Who cares? Got some fire herb.
Yeah.
So just being able to produce your own was kind of like literally game changing in the sense that it created independence. I wasn't worried about my guy answering the phone if I was going to run out, and it removed this anxiety towards thinking, man, should I quit smoking? Because like I'm pretty worried if I'm going to get another bag or not. But when you just have it everywhere, you stop thinking about that, you know.
It changes your mindset, because I started out as a gram dealer as like a 15-year-old kid. I lived in a tourist town and I would run grams, and that's how I'd do my thing. And you just kind of develop this weird kind of mindset around dealing and getting and scoring, and then once you start growing, it becomes different. You know what I mean? All of that anxiety about it, meeting up with a dude, or all those things that were stressful about it, all that stuff kind of goes away, and then you start developing this relationship with a plant that, in the end, for a lot of people, if they stay with it, absolutely changes their life. I know it did
does.
for me anyway.
It totally does. And I agree with you on that. Like, think about it. Imagine, like, I love coffee. If tomorrow the stores were sold out, it was illegal to buy it, and I had to call some guy that hopefully returned my fucking phone call to get me some coffee, I'd feel like a crackhead too. I'd be like, yo, I just want some coffee. I'm not like, I swear I'm not addicted to coffee, but like I need the coffee. Like fuck, we just take it for granted. You can just like, seriously, it's a thing. Like I'll wake up on the weekend, like, oh shit, I used all the coffee. Like, I don't know, do you want to go into town? Like, what do you do?
Yeah.
You know,
and now we're in this trap where they're trying to make it to where we're reliant on a commercial product at a store to fulfill our needs, where we want to kind of keep the plant at the people's level and make it accessible and make them successful. And I think that's one of the great things about the whole Build a Soil way, and the vibe that your whole community puts out, is that willingness to share and elevate each other, to be successful enough to be self-sufficient and do it in a way that at the end of the day they could feel good about.
Absolutely. And then your buddy has good herb. Then you can trade and hang out. And like, it's not a thing where they're like, hey, you have any more of that? And it's a one-way street because they don't grow. And like, I'll give it away. It's fine, but I don't expect them to like bring me $50. Like, dude, it's a plant and there's tons of it, especially when you're older and it's like, you're not trying to play the bills with it. You've got plenty, you're just sharing. It's so nice when it comes around the other way and you're like, whoa, somebody gave seaweed that was good. That's amazing. And so sharing the stuff makes a big difference. But I think at the end of the day, like, there's so much qualitative difference I wasn't aware of besides just what it looked like. Meaning, I just thought it was safe because it's a plant. And I feel like everyone in college was the same way. And then you start growing, and you're like, holy shit, there's Eagle 20 and there's russet
Yeah.
plates and there's mildew and mold, and people will do anything to get this harvested. And I literally, I'm
Yeah.
sure you guys thought the same thing when you started growing. You're like, what the fuck did I smoke? Like,
Yeah.
there's so
You can
much
only
bad
imagine.
by that, you
Right.
know?
Well,
Especially
for
that
me,
stuff that came in a brick.
yeah.
I
And
mean,
for me, what's really annoying is when I go to the dispensary and you're buying the nugs that you're buying, are the little nugs farther down on the branch. So I'm like, where are the good nugs? You know what I mean? Where are all the top nugs? And you're charging me how much for these little baby
Yeah.
nugs? You
And
know
if
what I
you
mean?
do testing a lot, you'll know that the top of the plant is going to test different than the side branches as far as
Oh
potency.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, for sure. And that's why I like to spread them out so you get more tops that are medium instead of just one that's gargantuan. I think it spreads the love around a little bit. But yeah, I remember when I first started growing, it was like, what's the biggest bud I could grow, right? And then
Right.
it's like all about the quality. And I don't like a big, like the center of a big nug is not as good
Oh
as like
yeah.
a perfect, where it's just like, right? It's like having one cookie and there's so little topping, where if you have a whole bunch of little ones, you get more of that. Same thing with bread. Like you make a little bread, you get a lot of that tasty crust, where if it's a big one, you get very little crust.
Yeah.
So
And the
Yeah,
big
I had
nugs are also what the caterpillars like, I've found.
yeah. Yeah. So I like medium size.
Yeah, yeah.
Golf balls. Golf balls.
Yeah, yeah.
So how are you doing on time today, Jeremy?
Well, I'm doing pretty good, but I feel like what's going to happen is my wife's going to pull up. The dogs are going to go crazy
Right.
because they're finishing harvesting at the farm. It's going to be a fiasco.
Yeah.
Soon.
Yeah, so we'll try to wrap it up. Let's try to we'll touch a little bit more on Build a Soil 3.0. I guess I just had
Yeah.
a couple questions about ingredients. I was looking through the ingredients list.
Let's do
And
it.
by the way, before I get too far off in that direction, if you're hearing my voice right now and it's before the date of what's the date? July 4th. Before July 4th, you go to buildasoil.com and use the code SUMMER23 for 10% off. He's got a sale going on right now, and he also has additional 5% off the Build a Soil family team products, and you can find that collection on his website. So I just wanted to make sure I plugged those, because everything that we're going to be talking about is all good stuff, and you could go out and buy it and get a little bit of a discount if you
Yeah, and
hop
if
on it.
not, like a lot of the local stores might carry Build a Soil, and if you ask, it helps us because then they're like, "Who's Build a Soil? Maybe I should carry it." And a few
Oh,
hundred stores
nice.
carry the products now, and so it's another way to go.
Oh, that's good to
But
know too.
the other thing I will preach is if you're any part of the world where you can't access Build a Soil, all this stuff works. It doesn't have to say Build a Soil on it. We're just looking for good quality stuff. And that's what we try and associate our name with, but we don't have a corner on the market. This stuff just works. Follow the process. And you'll see that when we discuss some 3.0 ingredients, you could rebuild this anywhere in the world. You might have slightly different ingredients, but to me, this is like saying, like, can you make a salad in the East Coast versus the West Coast? Yeah, with totally different ingredients, still a great salad. And
Totally.
so as long as we understand the goal, it doesn't have to be some set in stone thing. But in the
Yeah.
beginning, it's better to follow a recipe kind of like line by line because you don't know what you don't know. As you learn, you can break rules.
So, kind of to that point, actually, the next few ingredients that I was gonna mention are the meals. So there's alfalfa meal, kelp meal. One of the new ones that you introduced was the mustard seed meal. Those alfalfa meals and those kelp meals, to your point, I see those in mixes and organic mixes, and sometimes you can find those on sale at like random stores. I've told JR, I go to the grocery store, and they sometimes randomly have like a bunch of organic fertilizer of this sort of stuff. And because I've watched so many of your videos, I can kind of look at it and I'm like, no, this is the good stuff. So let's talk about that kelp meal, mustard seed meal, maybe the malted barley, the alfalfa meal. How does all that stuff work together? How does it help my plant?
Oh, this is good stuff. So the way I learned, it was introduced by Coot as far as like looking at amendments. We were after the primary nutrition. And so that's like saying, hey, does this meal have the protein and the calories that I need to be healthy? That's the NPK. But then from a health perspective, a lot of times you're going, yeah, but is it real food? And does it have probiotics? And Is it actual stuff that I want to put in my body? And so like you start asking deeper questions besides how many calories are in something. So the NPK is kind of like, hey, alfalfa meal should all generally be the same NPK. We're talking the same plant. Now, if you test it, it might be slightly elevated in N or P or something versus some other batch. But really the NPK went out the window. It was just, this is a well-rounded fertilizer. And alfalfa, like when you break it down, is the father of all foods. It was like the kelp of the land. And that's why animals, it's a feed, high protein, it's got high saponin in it. And so what I'm getting at is that we're looking for secondary parts of these plants that make them unique. Otherwise, anything can provide some nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus. So alfalfa meal has triacontanol in it. It has saponins in it. It has other benefits. And when it grows on the soil that it grows on, a lot of times it's pulling some mineral nutrition down from deep, and it reoccurs every single year so it can get that root system. And so alfalfa meal provides a lot. And rose growers swear by it. Like these things have little cult followings depending on which part of the growing culture you're coming from.
Yeah.
Generally, when I look at alfalfa meal, I look at it as kind of just an all-purpose fertilizer. It should have a lot of micronutrients and very small amounts of NPK, but it has a lot of carbon and it'll definitely kind of heat up your soil. So if I use a little too much alfalfa meal, I'll notice that it'll get hot. Like it likes to break down. The biology loves it. I prefer, if I had to choose one, I would say the seed meal is a little bit more nutritious, because when you're feeding an animal, like the seed is the most nutritious part. And that's a lot of times why we feed them corn, right? Not the stalk, not the grass that it's growing on. So alfalfa, although it has a ton of nutrition, a seed meal might have a little more. And the alfalfa is like adding all the secondary hormones and micronutrients. Where if you don't have alfalfa meal, kelp meal is full of growth hormones and full of micronutrients from the ocean. So those are kind of fairly interchangeable, I would say. And they're both fairly low NPK. And both of them probably have a little more potassium than anything. But really we're after those secondary functions. So kelp meal, if you notice, there was some books that Coot turned us on to by, I think, T.L. Sen, and discussing using seaweed extract and all these hormones that come in the kelp to try and get different growth responsive out of plants.
Yeah.
And what it found was pretty phenomenal. But kelp meal is a lot cheaper and you get a ton of benefits. It's just not as marketable because you can't sell it as a potion. So many of us just grab kelp meal. Kelp meal can have some arsenic in it. I don't think it's an issue. People have been eating it forever and had no problems, but it is something that comes from the ocean. So that can be something to consider. Kelp is a less is more, has a tiny bit of sodium in it, has lots of micronutrients. And so I like to use 1/2 cup per cubic foot of kelp meal. If you don't have it, alfalfa meal. If you've got both, you can use both, but I wouldn't do a full cup of both. It's a little too much per cubic foot of soil. And then there's other types of nutrients. So when we look at, there's like animal components, like some people will use chicken manure and other manures as a nutrient. But when we get away from that, there's only so many plants that are pretty common. And so when we mentioned that seed meals were important and that micronutrients, so if you have some alfalfa or some kelp, a lot of times you're getting a lot of those micronutrients that might be hard to get elsewhere in small amounts. But then we're looking at the seed meals, and that's where we started talking about sprouted seeds, like the malted barley or the mustard seed meal. These have other benefits. What I mean by that is any sprouted seed is going to be full of enzymes when you stop it, because that's all sprouting is, this enzyme production. That's why it's part of beer brewing. That's why it's so important. And so what Coot taught us and what he realized was these enzymes are like the key to a lock. So phosphatase unlocks phosphorus. And a lot of times when you're trying to get available nutrients in living soil, you need more enzymes to break down the organic nutrients fast enough for your plant to have access. Well, it turns out that's what worms do. They're rubbing up against the material and exuding the enzymes that will break it down so that they can stomach it. And that process makes the nutrients more available for the plants. Sprouting seeds does something similar. And the reason why sprouting barley was important was the best sprouters in the world that were trying to peak the enzyme content were for beer brewers. So you could buy 50-pound bags of it, where all the other sprouted seeds, you'd have to sprout on your own or go to some artisan like whiskey specialist or somebody that had a special grain that would sprout. You can also sprout your own. So you can literally go get, Coot's first recommendation was, hey, everybody has organic popcorn at the grocery store. Grab that, germinate it. And then once the tail pops out, blend it in water, run it through like a colander or something to just strain the chunks out so you're not watering that all in. Or you can leave it in, depends on your garden, right? And the results we all saw were phenomenal. So yeah, seed meal is great, but when you sprout it, you're getting this enzyme powerhouse with it that lends itself to being more powerful. And then when we look at mustard seed meal, it's a seed meal. But what we found is that it produces a biofuel that supports the strawberry industry that makes it so they're not using toxic chemicals. Great benefit. And then second from that, it has this enzyme. We talked about enzymes. And this one in particular, if an animal were to chew on the mustard, it creates this hot, spicy effect that makes them want to go away. Well, that reaction actually will kill fungus gnat larvae and other problems in the soil. And so we're not guaranteeing that it's going to work. Like nature doesn't just drop nuclear bombs and everything's dead. It creates like a lowering so that the rest of the balance can overtake it healthily. But we noticed when we mixed mustard seed meal into the soil, there wasn't gnats just flying out of the bag from a wet batch of compost from one part of the year.
Interesting.
So it allowed us to quality control slightly better. And when you mix at home, you see it. If you use the mustard seed meal, your soil will turn solid white with mycelium. And what I've come to think of that as is it wiped out all the competition, and now all the probiotics, literally, it's almost like a forest fire went through. And now it's nothing but wide open for new growth. And so when you put the mustard seed meal in there, that enzyme reaction happens. And after a few minutes, it's gone. And after a day or two, it just myceliates out like harder than you've ever seen. It's pretty incredible what happens.
Yeah.
Helps break nutrition down. So again, you can pick all these ingredients. You can read about them, but just do a Google. Like, what does alfalfa have? What does kelp have? And then you can start to choose like, oh, okay, well, instead of blood meal that's just nitrogen, I can add some seed meal, some alfalfa, and I have all the micronutrients, enzymes, secondary plant hormones, and I'm still getting some nitrogen that I needed. So it becomes like compounding effect of each ingredient that you add, having 2 or 3 things that it adds to the equation. And when you get this synchronicity together where you're getting all of that, it becomes, I think, more like a higher food forest that produces very nutrient dense food because of all of the different materials that broke down to eventually build that soil.
Yeah. I wanted to jump in real quick on the mustard seed meal because I've been using it. I bought like a 10-pound bag of it and I've just been kind of like having fun with it, like just finding reasons to use it. And I know you said to not do this, but I've been using it in my worm bin and it's completely fine. Like the worm, it actually seems like the worms go crazy. Like it's, and I've been using it in my
reactions happening. So like if you trapped it in worms right while the enzyme reaction was occurring, it's like a glucosinolate. Myrinase, I forget the exact enzyme, but it can harm them. But when I put it on my worm bin, worms are not stupid. They were just like, oh, I'll just move over here and then come back the next day when it's being broken down.
Yeah, totally.
So, but yeah, like you've seen, it's actually worked pretty well in the worm bin. But I speak with caution because I'm like, I just don't want someone to call me and be like, I killed every worm, you know?
Totally. No, the other pro tip I would use for it too, or the other thing I've liked to do, I did with it recently, is I top dressed I use 30-gallon pots, and I top dressed a pot with that, mixed it in with like a little bit of compost, and then I put on my straw on top, and just like you were saying, within a couple of days, you peel back that straw or the mulch or your mulch layer, and you'll see there's white stuff all over the place, and it's really exciting. Like you have that like nerdy organic grower moment where you're like, oh, it's alive, and it's exciting when you see that stuff happening.
Yep. And so what we originally only saw with using like a bokashi, we started to see with sprouted seeds and with mustard seed, and it's because of this huge enzymatic reaction that you get that causes this cascade of biology that shows you that white actual growing mycelium by a bacteria, whatever it is in that instance. It goes wild. And so when we see that, we like those ingredients. And, mustard seed meal, the industry is strange. So like there's nobody beating down the mustard seed producers to get certified organic listed so they can eat it. It's just not popular enough by the 100 acres that they're growing it for fuel. So all these growers are using it so they don't have to spray their fields, so that they can biofumigate something totally natural. So you're getting what is more than likely a very sustainably grown product, but there's no motivation for them to get extra money and sell it to the grocery store as a certified organic, because that's not what it is. And they're not making GMO mustard of this variety. So it's like, just by choosing a more narrow focused type of input, you eliminate a lot of the problems that are associated with agriculture. But if you buy corn, you better find non-GMO, organically grown, because corn is known to be just covered in pesticides.
Yeah.
So we try and choose ingredients that are more likely to be out of that loop and not even have those problems,
Totally. Well,
And
I know.
and
Sorry, JR, go ahead.
and kind of talking about closing that loop, one of the ingredients that are here is the organic Canadian sphagnum peat moss. We know that peat moss is not an endless supply. And so, for a no till situation where you're building a bed that you can maintain over time versus filling a pot every time with this peat moss,
Yep.
that is not, can you kind of speak to that as well?
Yeah. There was an article I was going to release and I just never did because I didn't want to sound hypey and I want to make sure it's finished. But we go through every ingredient and why we use it and why we don't use it. And we had a comparison on there of peat moss and cocoa because we've chosen peat moss. There are all other alternatives. You can use leaf mold. You can make a very like low input woody compost by worms that doesn't have a lot of fertility in it, but it makes a casting that's like good without being over the top in nutrients. And you can use that as your peat moss. We've used pit moss. We've tried so many things, but the Canadian sphagnum peat moss is a limited resource, but in Canada, it's mined very restrictively. And they've mined less than I believe it's less than 1% in the entire history of the gardening industry. Where if you juxtapose that to over the pond, you hear of like peaty scotch that has a little smoky flavor to it. It's because they burn the peat literally to heat it. And they use it for an energy source and they have significantly less resources and protocol over how to harvest it in a sustainable way. So if you're buying peat overseas, you're probably buying something not sustainable. If you're buying it from the Canadian Sphagnum Peat Moss Association, probably significantly more sustainable. However, we're still ripping it up from the earth. And so at the end of the day, if we're going to do that, it'd be better to keep it, right, than throw it away every single time. And then when it comes to cocoa core, it's like, well, you have to ship it from across the world on a boat. It comes from cultivation. So they're growing these coconuts with fertilizer inputs that are usually not organic. And then they have to rinse it with thousands and thousands of gallons of water. That's a waste to get the sodium out. So you start to compare and add on all of it. And it becomes where it's like there's no easy choice. So we chose what was best because BuildASoil's mission was the best quality with a sustainable mindset. If I wanted most sustainable with a quality mindset, I would say don't buy a fucking thing from me. Make it all from scratch. Close your loop. Do full permaculture. But I'm a hypocrite. I live in a world where I want to enjoy life. I want to run a business. I want to support a family. And if I can do that with something that I love and constantly keep that sustainability at the forefront as a target for improvement each year, then I feel like I'm less of a hypocrite than I was the year before. And I'm striving for something worthwhile. So don't beat yourself up too much. There's too many of us that are pretty hardcore and we're quick to kind of be like, oh, that's not sustainable. Running a business usually isn't. And so from the home grower's perspective, keeping it's probably better than throwing it away every single cycle and going through more cocoa, more peat moss, more whatever it is that you're throwing away. I mean, I have the same bed of soil in my garage since I moved in here. I'm not going to move it until I move out. Like it's just, it works. So.
Yeah, no, and Jeremy, I know we're running out of time, and I want to be respectful of that. And so, on that note, too, I did want to say to our viewers, just consider investing in your soil. Like actually one of a guy in our chat, Jason D, he was saying, I don't trust myself to mix my own soil. And I get that. So, consider investing in maybe BuildASoil 3.0, or maybe it's something else. And maybe you amend that soil with the craft blend. That's what I've done personally, where I didn't want to buy like a pallet of soil and have it shipped out to me. So I bought the soil locally, but then I amended it with craft blend. And anyways, for me, that investment was certainly worth it because I'm still using that soil like 4 or 5 years later. I'm still using it, and I'm just adding compost to it. I'm adding that mustard seed meal that I bought from you guys, all those sorts of things. So I want to put that out there for people to think about. And that's one of the things that I love about your business too, is you're not putting us on the basically the razor blade treadmill where I just need to always figure out I need to just buy more razor blades. You know what I mean? You can kind of set up with that basics, and then you just need to know what are those few things that I need to get here and there to add on. But I'm not needing to buy tons of stuff every year to get through the season.
I think some of that also comes from the old way. And the old way, what I mean by that is if you made a super soil, and you didn't put the lighter soil on top and you overdid your super
Yeah.
soil, you can fuck
Yeah.
some stuff up. Or if you did the rev and you like spikes and layers in this little pot, you better get it right. But if you
Yeah.
just go like a less is more, half as much as normal with a lot more soil, you can trust anyone to mix your soil. Your plant will crush. It's when we're trying to ride the line, like making your own 3.0, really putting as much as you can in there. It might get funky for a couple weeks, but here's a cool trick. If you thought you've overdone your soil for whatever reason, you can put a tablespoon of gypsum in some water, in like 4 gallons of water, and you can flush your soil with that. And the gypsum is calcium and sulfur, and the sulfur will bind to the excesses that are floating, and it'll remove it from the cation exchange and replace it with calcium. What's so cool is if calcium is at the top, your soil is going to be great because there's only so much room for the others, and it's hard to be in excess. And then the other trick is you can grow cover crop. So you could literally cover it with cover crop seed, grow it, and all of a sudden the cover crop will act funky and it'll start growing healthy again, and it'll start eating your excesses. And then you chop and drop it, and now it's organic and it's balanced again. So there's some definite ways to overcome if you've messed up a batch of soil to the point where like you don't even have to be good. So I wouldn't overthink it too much. And I think that once you get a little experience, most people see that this is significantly easier than it's made out to be. It's just that there's a few landmines you can step on. Like if you overwater a huge bed of soil, or if you mix in 3 times as much because you think that more is better, it'll cause a problem. But besides that, I mean, these plants are pretty easy to grow once you get a good routine going.
Totally. Well, with that, JR, is there one last question that you want to get in, or are we good to go?
I would like to just shout out any events or anything that you are excited about in the summer getting to, and then kind of give us our final shout outs as to where people can find you and locate BuildASoil and all that fun stuff.
Okay. Yeah, you can go to buildasoil.com, use our store locator. You can always hit us up on Instagram or support@buildasoil.com. We've got a team of growers that answer questions. So we do this every day. We're not just like, of course, anybody I'm sure can make a decent soil or an amendment, but we grow. Like this is what we do. And so I think that's a help. Other than that, events and stuff that I'm excited about this year, I have had a crazy year. I've not planned much. My wife was recovering from hip surgery. We had a busy season. So I'm just looking forward to relaxing a little bit. I have no plans. I don't have an event in particular that I'm really planning at being at. I was talking to Martin, who runs our wholesale, and there is a couple things that he's been putting in my ear that I might want to go to, but I'm a little burnt out on traveling and going to all these events. And I really think this year is the year where we really focus on our internal process, make sure quality is the best it can be, focus on what we're doing on the farm. Like I said, my wife's running the whole farm by herself right now, so it's hard to take any time off. And we're going to come out of this season better for it. And we're going to create a epic 2024. And if I get my way, I will be through this time where I'll start to map out events that we get to go to, because it's really, really fun to hang out with everybody and share herb and like see new cities and have a different type of like workcation, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
Not a lot of it going on this year. Otherwise, Instagram, YouTube, BuildASoil. Besides that, I try and do anybody that invites me. If like the stars align and we can sync up, I try and just spread the mantra and spread it. So if you know somebody that has a show or something like that and has a whole bunch of other guests on it, a lot of times now that I've been out there, like you can go find this stuff by just going to YouTube and type in BuildASoil. You can find different stuff and you can hear the same conversation.
Yeah.
But like to be here with you guys to ask real questions, like that's my favorite. A lot of times people ask stuff, but when I'm talking to other growers, they're like, yeah, but what about this where I live, or the shade and the flowering? Like those are just raw, natural. And to me, that's like the best, because it might help one person that has that exact same feeling. And when they know it's a real question and a real answer, like, you know, it connects. And the more of that we can do, I think the better. I'm still like in shock that after 10 years of doing this, I get to do this for a living. So just thank you for having me.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. We appreciate the vibes. Well, when you're hopefully relaxing a little bit this year, what's the strain or two that you'll be enjoying?
Okay, good question. So right now I've been really enjoying the Fruit by the Funk, which we grew in the last round that I kept a mom of. And I have the Soleil Levant, which we had from the last round, that I really like it because it's super terpy, but I keep grabbing the Fruit by the Funk jars because it's got a lot of that fuel in it that I really look for. And for whatever reason, it never gets me like anxious or some type of way. Like I just feel really good when I smoke it. And then from Covert, I popped some of his GMO backcross. We have like a Discord for people that support the YouTube so that we make more videos.
Yeah,
And they
cool.
did 420 like seed popping sessions. So I popped some more Kid Kai and some more Covert. And I'll be smoking a lot of that this summer. So hopefully, you know, the last season, a lot of that Fruit by the Funk I'll be smoking. But then I'm going to be harvesting this outdoor, this indoor. I'm going to have a little bit of outdoor, and we'll have season 5 all like harvesting at once. So I feel like Christmas is going to be like lit this year.
Yeah, that's great.
That's
gonna
awesome.
be great.
Well, Jeremy, thank you so much for hanging out with us. We really appreciate your generosity and your knowledge sharing with us. It's always appreciated and the time. So thank you so much. If you guys had a great time today, please make sure to support Jeremy. Use that summer code sale. That code is... It is summer 23. That's 10% off the entire site. They also have the BuildASoil family team products, has an extra 5% off, and those discounts do stack, so you can get a bit of a discount. There's even a clearance section. So go ham, go to buildasoil.com and have some
There's
fun.
a catch.
Yeah, there's a catch.
You have to add 3 items. And the reason why is, you know, we're a small crew. And so if we have to go get 1 item off the shelf, pay for the box, pay for the tape, pay for the labor, it's a little bit harder when we have a sale. And so if you get 3 in the box, then like it makes it where we don't lose money. And so that's the only catch. You got to get 3 items. You need 3 items on the website, and then that coupon code will work. So.
Very fair.
That's awesome.
Yeah, very much appreciated. And definitely check out his channel. It's a wealth of knowledge, and support it if you can. But thank you so much, Jeremy. As always, we've had a great time. And JR, growers love.
Growers love.
Later, bros.